and I would like to welcome my dear friend Valentina, who is one of the co-founders of Youth by Youth and a long-time collaborator. And thank you, Valentina, for being with us. And over to you.
Thank you, Pavel. And hello, everyone. It's great to see such a full room exploring our dream for humanity. And our friends at AMI, as they said, we are indigenizing education, and really at Youth by Youth, we center our process as unlocking learning as liberation. So hopefully you are feeling that liberation by the end of this session today. And we want to give space to really living the questions. And I think, as we've seen, we should expect and accept non-closure of this conversation, but we will definitely be exploring a lot of questions. And so with that, I want to offer one question to live into before I pass to my co-creator at Youth by Youth, Ila, our ecosystem weaver and gardener, who will bring us through in a bit of a presencing and rooting into our intentions today. And this question that I want us to live into is, where do we see intergenerational collaboration in the natural world? Where do we see intergenerational collaboration in the natural world? And how may we learn from it? And with that question, to just plant a seed, I will pass to Ila.
Hi, it's lovely to be with all of you again, and some of you for the first time. And today's session, we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to take you eventually into breakouts to really get deeper into living the questions and exploring things together. We want to practice intergenerational dialogue here and now. So let's talk about it, but also let's do it. Let's live it. Let's be it. And the kind of guiding questions and intentions for this session are, how can models of intergenerational learning be organized? And how can these models support the proactive transformation of our societies? So there's about to be a whole bunch more questions as well. At Youth by Youth, we really love a learning question to guide us and recognize that questions allow us to know that our learning never ends. And first, what I want to do is just ground us for a second in this concept of intergenerationality. So I invite you to get comfortable, to close your eyes if that feels safe, to feel your body being held by earth, by our mother, by our father sky, by the heavens, and to feel the web that connects all of us across space and across time, to be right here in this moment. And just feeling in to our backs, feeling into our ancestors, to those who've come before us. Feeling into those in our ancestors, both maybe in our blood, intellectual, spiritual, emotional lineages, who are here to support us in this work, in this life. Feeling all of your past selves, all of the beings that you once were in this life, and if you live that in many lives. And then just feeling into the space in front of you, the beings who are yet to come, the ones who are waiting for us, those who will inhabit the more beautiful world that we are creating. And the yous who are yet to come. The versions of yourself that you will grow into. And just feeling that in this moment, at this time, you connect all of these realities, all of these beings. this is the moment. And so, as you feel ready, coming back into the room, just taking a moment to look at the faces on the screen, the people, beings who we are here with, our comrades, our accomplices, because this is dangerous work, and our joyful co-creators. So I'm going to hand back over to Valentina, who is going to take us through a little lean on time introduction of the people who we've brought together to hold these breakouts. And we are super, super excited for this.
Thank you, Ila. Thank you for rooting us in the long view and expansive view of intergenerationality. I am going to invite our wonderful co-facilitators to introduce the breakout rooms that you will choose to participate in. You may be randomly assigned, you may be able to choose your room, but regardless, it will be a question that we will all collectively learn from and synthesize at the end insights. Just to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how this was designed, each room is being held by an intergenerational duo, and the entirety of this session was designed intergenerationally, 16 plus. So we don't have any alphas, but most generations that are in the alive at the moment were present. And I am going to invite each person to give 1 to 2 minutes, share your question and who you are, and we will maybe make up 10 minutes of time. So I'm going to first pass to Ed, my dear friend at Learning Planet Institute, and Anushka.
Thanks so much, Valentina. I'll try to give 20 seconds to give maximum time to Anushka, who's incredible. So I'm Ed, and I work basically on running the youth community with an amazing youth council in the Learning Planet Alliance, founded by the Learning Planet Institute and UNESCO. And in our session today, it will be hosted with the wonderful Anushka, who will present herself in a second. But really looking into the word intergenerational and connecting this to and trying to dig a bit deeper in it, and maybe through connecting as well to our senses. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we feel when we think of intergenerational? Anushka, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ed. Hi, everyone. My name is Anushka. I'm a youth fellow at the Learning Planet. I am also a part of their first ever youth council. I'm very excited to dive into the topic of intergenerational learning because as somebody who's benefited from mentorship and intergenerational learning processes greatly, finding mentors who are already excelling in their fields and also learning from those who are younger to me has allowed me to understand how inclusive learning is and how we can bridge the gap between different schools of thought and make sure that we are bringing in something that's valuable for everyone. And so that's what we're going to be diving into. And I'm excited to learn more from you all and listen to what you have to say. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Anushka and Ed, holding those questions, and I'm putting them in the chat as we speak. I'm now going to pass to Alexander and Victor, who are holding breakout room 2.
I will start. Hello, everyone. Happy to see you. So our main, I would briefly introduce myself. I'm Victor. I was a student at the Innovative University Minerva, if you've heard. And I was also participating in creating innovative project, the University of Students. And the question for today that we want to discuss is how to include the youth perspectives in how we design and co-create decision-making systems and education. And I want to add additional twist and maybe a bit of radical thought to this. Imagine if the upper cap for participating in the government would be limited to 20 years old. How would we then design the education to empower people who would rule over us? And I will give a voice to Alexander.
Hi to everybody. My name is Alex, and I'm from Riga, from youth organization Young Folks LV. We create a huge community for 10 years, from the 5 teenagers, we growing up till 400 youngsters. And with Victor, yes, I will join to our, and we will discuss our topic, yes, so you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander and Victor. I'm curious to hear what comes out of the more radical questions of bringing youth voices really at the heart of our systems. I am now going to invite Ila, on behalf of Ila and myself, who are holding our third breakout room. And Ila, if you could share those questions.
Yes, I'm Ila and I work with Val, and for the last 5 or 6 months, we've been exploring within our own youth by youth community what allyship looks like. And so on that theme, I'm excited to invite us into the exploration of what roles and archetypes are required for genuine intergenerational collaboration. And I think this brings in Robin's question about the generations that exist within us. How can we be the elder, the ally, the accomplice, the youth? How can we invite all of those perspectives in, and really getting curious about the role of diversity, and how we do this? How do we grow the trust that's needed when trust has been destroyed over many, many years? I think is an essential question. So I'm really excited to explore it with you all.
Awesome. Choose our room. Just kidding. All questions are equal and important. And last but not least, Zineb and Arielua from also our Youth by Youth family, who will be holding our fourth room. I'll pass it perhaps to you, Ari.
All right. Thank you so much for that warm invite. Hi, everyone. I was going to say activist, but I knew that it wasn't an activist group. But hi, everyone. My name is Arielua Adeyinka. I'm joining this call from Lagos, Nigeria. And I will be within this amazing space with Z. I currently work with these amazing people, Val, Z, Ila, and Moini, and so many other people in the capacity of the executive director at Youth by Youth. And I'm really, really glad about this question that we're actually exploring, because it says that what traps, pitfalls do we have with our current intergenerational spaces? Where is the resistance and rationale for people who are not practicing this? And also, we're not just talking about the traps and pitfalls. We are talking about how we are going to weave our way out of these traps. And this really means a lot to me personally, because in the last 3 years, I've been trying to weave intergenerational spaces, and I've been able to observe some traps and pitfalls and some challenges. So it would be really, really nice learning and co-creating with you what the session will look like. But I would also like for Z to add so what we should expect in this breakout. Hi, Z.
Thanks, Harry. Zineb, I'm also a co-founder at Youth by Youth, and I'll be your note taker in the session. And indeed, the idea here is to really understand why some spaces are not intergenerational yet, and what can we do to essentially create that mindset that enables people to want to have intergenerational collaborations in a way that actually work for both young people and for adults. So I'm sure this is going to be a fascinating conversation, and I'm looking forward to holding it with Ari.
Wonderful. So we have some juicy questions to explore, and we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to pass Ila to share a little bit how it works.
So you're about to be invited into breakouts, I'm hoping. And when you are, we're going to invite to really make the most of this time. It's not a lot of time. And this is, again, the very beginning of another spiral of a conversation that just keeps on going. So this is an invitation to practice active listening and co-sensing, sensing the connections between all of you in the room, and really our facilitators are here to tease out the wisdom. We don't know any more than you do. And I think that's a really important thing to just state. We're in this as active participants. We have many ways to continue these conversations and this work. And I think we can offer some of those at the end. So don't worry, it will keep going. This is our life's work, right? This is the dream of the earth. It doesn't stop after one Zoom meeting. And so the co-hosts are going to share the question and just really invite you to sit with it for a second and sense, so that our responses and our reflections can really come from that somatic space of spirit, not just from what we might know, although what we might know is also very welcome. And then we're going to invite you to share your reflections on the question. How are you living it? How are you experiencing it in your work, in your life? And we're inviting our elder facilitator to model intergenerational collaboration by really stepping back, taking the notes, and I'll share the harvesting document in the chat with everyone so you all have it, and supporting our youth facilitator when needed. So any questions just before we send you off into new worlds?
Just a technical thing. I think once you give us the goal, we will open up the breakout rooms, and each of the participants will be able to choose from one of 4 meeting rooms, as we suggested. So you can choose your question that you want to explore, and we can go at any moment.
Let's go. And I think we'll have 15 minutes. I absolutely love, we left on Derry's question of, it's not enough, but is it a start? And yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
That's perfect.
And would love to hear maybe from one person in each room, and I can take some little notes and also share that harvesting document again so we can all connect to the collective wisdom of the group. Yeah, if someone from Ed and Anushka's room would like to just share like a minute, the key insights.
Anushka, do you want to give it a go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had brilliant perspectives, some things that I haven't heard before. So truly an intergenerational dialogue. We learned so much about going in both ways, learning from both younger and older people. And it is all about collaborating for sure. Intergenerational learning is all about collaboration. And then we learned from Karambu and her work and how she works in a children's home, and young people step in with so much curiosity, as well as older people, grandparents who also have curiosity. So there's how do I bring in different intergenerational aspects of myself? And then also listening loudly. We have to ensure that when we're learning intergenerationally, we listen patiently. And then we also had a very amazing story from Anna, where she talked about how we can trace our origins and learn from our cultural spaces and stories from people from the past and our world and our culture. So it's so important that if you want to weave intergenerational learning as humans, we need to connect beyond just spaces of learning and also learn from our past and listening to stories that are present conveniently. And also it needs to be more about empathy. We need to be listening loudly, a theme that came over again and again. So Dorothy, she again shared her experiences as a photographer and a visual storyteller, and how she shared a project where in 2030, 1 out of 6 people will be over 60 years old. So we need to know that we do not have to forget about our elders just to ensure that we are including our younger people. It needs to be both of it. it needs to be inclusive. It needs to be something that doesn't exclude anyone just because of their age. And then we go on to our next point about what Pavel said, that intergenerational learning aspect is often missing for the younger ones in the generation. Only bridging to the forerunner of another generation doesn't really deal with this. We keep missing the white spaces. So what we need to focus on is when we're bringing about these discussions, we also look in the middle spaces and ensure that we're having some sort of structure to bridge in the gaps. And then Alexander brought in a very important point of ageism, that how it works in both ways. It's not that somebody is really old, so we talk to them in a certain way, and somebody's really young, so we talk to them in a certain way that they understand. I think we really need to ensure that this is a judgment-free learning space from both sides, and we remove the harmful stereotypes that we do have in place and learn about different things, the temporal cultures, the transcultural and transtemporal perspectives when we're talking about intergenerational learning. I hope I didn't miss all the wonderful things, but yeah, I tried to summarize. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anushka. And Alexander and Victor, either one of you or someone else from your room.
Okay, I can try. So basically, we discussed how to empower youth and make the inclusion not just about showing up, but also to give the power to the youth. And some of the thoughts that we discussed were that the relationships between youth and older generations should be on the same level. It should be more like horizontal, and we should be setting boundaries to be more sensitive to everyone. And then we discussed how wisdom keepers, we are intergenerational, going from one paradigm to another, and creating a future together. And there are different programs that provide youngsters with the opportunities to be the leaders and make them organizers. And this might be a way of education that is in parallel to traditional systems. And we also discussed how we should give the resources to the young and provide them with the education on leadership, investment, empathy, open-mindedness, feedback mechanisms of how bigger systems works, and provide them with AI or education or mentorship, provide them with the opportunities to give input, and also ensure that in the government structures there are different generations involved. We also discussed how it's important to be a host for the space for the young, and be with them in the flow, and stop any expectations. Instead, try to be with them in touch, and try to connect to their game and to their reality, and create togetherness and a common garden in this communication.
Beautiful. I love that, the invitation of hospitality and hosting as a key skill. I'd love to invite somebody else from our breakout who's not myself or Valentina to feedback. I'm wondering, Katya or Robin, there are faces I can see, or Majida.
I would suggest Dari, our great poet, who says it's not enough, but is it a start? I mean, we definitely wanted to hear him more, so get a feel of what he sensed, if he's still here.
Yeah, Dari, we'd love to know.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry I joined you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm really sorry I joined you so late. I was just going to say, I spent all my life as a teacher trying to find this space, to create the space and the time, which is quite difficult in schools. Probably my best opportunities were as a class teacher with kids who'd failed a high stakes test in England called the 11 plus. But I sort of progressed through the system and ended up running a school, always trying to create space and time that belong to young people, for them to follow their own interests, concerns, passions, questions, but for the chunk of the curriculum to be very much in the hands of young people. And I've gone on arguing for this. Some people say, well, that sounds like a reasonable idea. You're not trying to take over the whole thing and have a revolution. But to actually get it to start is quite difficult. But I am collecting examples from around the world of where young people have been put in charge of their own learning for part of the time. Some of the purists say, oh, it's no good, self-directed learning. It's got to be the whole curriculum. It's got to be the whole school experience, like Sudbury Valley School or the democratic schools around the world. But you're not likely to be able to get that kind of transition in the amount of time we've got as a species. So this is why I say you've got to start somewhere. And 20% seems a reasonable amount. Some companies actually offer their staff 20% of their paid time to develop new ideas that they find interesting that aren't necessarily going to help the bottom line of the company. I mean, Google does that to some extent, and 3M. And there's a big English paint chemical company that gives its staff time to carry on learning. This links to something that Isla said yesterday about the importance of lifelong learning. We talk about preparing kids in school for lifelong learning, but we don't give them any opportunity in many school systems to actually learn how you would do it. In fact, in many schools, we put them off learning. And I think the problems with mental health, particularly in my country in England, which are very acute at present, is partly to do with this endless anxiety, obsession with tests. We actually fail 30% of our kids. The examination system is designed to fail 30% of our kids. Well, what a thing to do. Yeah, so we start somewhere. I've written a book called Another Way is Possible, Becoming a Democratic Teacher in a State School. You can get it on Amazon. It's ever so cheap, or I'll send you a free copy as a PDF if you like, if anyone's interested.
I am.
I'll put it in the chat. It's called Another Way is Possible, Becoming a Democratic Teacher in the State School. And that's where most of the kids are in our state school systems. So we've got to come up with some ideas that are really possible and practical and implementable. The great thing about putting kids in charge of 20% of the curriculum, it doesn't cost anything. You don't need more teachers. You might even need fewer. You don't need lots of expensive new resources. It could be done tomorrow very cheaply. Okay, I'll put it in the chat and I'll also shut up. Thanks for inviting me.
I just want to say, Dari, it's, you have so much wonderful things to say, but also what you was talking about, what I was saying earlier about the body language, you just irradiate so much love. I just feel all myself tickling. And thank you so much. If you were my teacher in school, I wouldn't have skipped any classes. So thank you.
Well, do you know, one of the lovely things is when I started to write the book, it was really about my first class 40 years ago. And some kids who were in that class, bit of synchronicity, talking about young, got in touch with me, nothing to do with the book. They just got in touch with me. And I've been able to ask some of them to write chapters in the book. That might make it more interesting. These are kids I worked with 40 years ago.
Dari,
yeah.
You are so passionate and I'd love to talk to you, but I think we're already behind in the rest of the schedule because there's still a couple more panels.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's us, and it's just really passionate, but we're all agree that there's not enough time for all the wonderful people to share here, but it's just the beginning. So
I'm muting myself now.
But thank you for all you shared. And back to the host.
I think last but not least, we have Zineb and Arielua. Now, if I could just say one thing about the archetypes that Ari embodied, there is the young person, there's also there were the archetypes within ourselves, there were the archetypes amongst ourselves, and the archetypes beyond our living selves. And so I would encourage you to look into those notes for all of those layers of archetypes. And I will pass to Z or Ari.
I think Z asked me to summarize first or offer some short reflections, so I can do that and then pass it on to anyone else in the group. Yeah, so our question was, what traps and pitfalls do we have with current intergenerational spaces? And then what is the resistance or the rationale for people not practicing intergenerational collaboration? And a third question we didn't get to because we didn't have the time, which I think is one of the traps and pitfalls. How do we weave our way out of these traps, fixed mindsets and barriers? And so some of the things the seven of us said, I'm not, we have pretty good notes. I'm not going to read every single thing that's here. You can look for yourselves, but I think there was some really interesting discussion about the different kinds of value that people bring, whether they're elders or youngers, and misconceptions about that, and the lack of valuing of the different kinds of wisdom that stood out to me, and the notion that in this current time of rapid change, some of the traditional notions of the value of elder wisdom maybe don't apply anymore, and yet there still is a place for it. So how do we navigate that? How do we learn to handle that? Related to that was the naming of the lack of rites of passage to mark these different stages and invite all of us to embody the highest form of those different stages, and what that we don't get that training, we don't get that learning in many cases, and that's true at all levels, youth, but also a transition into elderhood was named. As far as resistance and barriers, so there's a lot of good stuff here. Ego was named. Again, the difference between the generations and how do we navigate that? Maybe in particular, the need for more of a growth mindset among elders, and particularly in some traditional contexts, the need to embrace more diversity and coexistence. Yeah, again, there's a lot here. Maybe there's some highlights that other people in the group want to share. That's what stood out most to me.
I think I'm going to put the link back into the chat and invite everyone to take some time after this to read it, because I'm aware that we have another panel in the closing, and just want to take us out of this space and into the next space with something we learned from our teachers in intergenerational learning at Dream a Dream, which is called a love whoosh. So I'm going to invite you all to just charge up the love and really move the energy around your heart and get faster and faster and faster and faster. And we're going to go 3, 2, 1, and just send it out across the screen, across time, to all beings, and right back to yourself. And thank you for exploring and navigating with us.
Thank you all. And may we continue this conversation for generations to come. And I will pass to Pavel.
There is no other way, huh? Well, that was definitely what we call walking the talk. I wholeheartedly would like to thank all of people who actually co-created this session. It was so enjoyable. Thank you. And most important, it from the start was a co-creation. So we kind of offered the space to youth by youth, and we started devising it together, and it was such a joy in kind of getting us into the session, discovering together questions that we want to explore, formats in which we want to hold it, and so on. So all of it was not like nothing was imposed. It was all genuinely intergenerationally co-created. So thank you very much